I wanted to pass it over to Margie Sebastiani, the owner and director of Sonshine Christian Academy, and thank her for having us here today. Margie.
Well, thank you everybody for coming on this windy earthquake day. So I'm going to look at it as, have we ever had an earthquake that we felt like this in so many years? Do you know what this tells me? We're going to crack open the coffers and it's going to be full thunder. So I'm going to take that as a warning, and that we're on the right track. So quickly, I'm very grateful that you're here. So I'm sure you all know the crisis that we are in. I have been the executive director, owner, and founder of Sonshine Christian Academy since January of 2000. However, I've been in this building since 1988. So yes, I'm probably older than everybody here, but I don't really care. And the landscape of the ECE has changed drastically, and we all know that. The first thing I'd like to say is please stop calling us a daycare.
Yes, thank you.
Please,
Educating.
we are a child care center. Please stop calling us providers. That is insulting. We are professionals.
Yes.
We are required or asked through STARS to have our degrees. Why are we not giving that respect? So I bang that drum a lot. So just quickly, from Sonshine's point of view, we are licensed for 132 children. I currently have 85. I have 2 closed classrooms. I have rooms that are not even close to being full for 2 reasons. One, the parents cannot afford, because we're right below what the subsidy will allow them to be. And I don't have staff. Since COVID, I have not been able to get back to where we were. And my highest time before COVID was 110 children. I'm not anywhere close to that. I still get phone calls every day. I still have easily 25 to 50 families who we've stopped keeping a waiting list, because I honestly don't have the time to call them back and say, are you still waiting? So, and there is a great need, a huge need for us not to put a Band-Aid on this situation, but to, in the reality of it, is to make it permanent. We can't be wondering from day to day, and I can't keep counting pennies to see, am I going to be able to pay my staff this month or this week? Just 10 days ago, a family had to leave with an 18-month-old because she got a promotion at work, which gave her a raise, which got her off subsidy, which means she couldn't afford to come back. She couldn't stay. So it broke my heart that this 18-month-old little girl doesn't have a place to go, and that family and neighbors are helping out. This is reality. This is the crisis. And I know that every one of you here know this. So all of our voices together need to be able to fight for these children, to fight for our teachers, for our professionals who are raising the next generation. So whatever it is that you have to do, we are pleading for you to do it. So on that note,
It goes to me.
Donna.
it goes to you.
Thank you, Margie. Thanks so
you.
much for hosting us.
You're welcome.
So actually, Margie kind of made the point of why we're here today. We're here today to really, I'm Donna Cooper, I'm the Executive Director of Children First, and we're here today to hear directly from families who are facing a child care, that can't afford child care, and from child care professionals who are struggling to find staff so they can open classrooms, but even when they do, people can't walk into them because they can't afford child care. And before we kick off this conversation, I do want to thank so much the chair of the Delaware County Council, Dr. Monica Taylor, who has been a champion for childcare and always my go-to story of how long you need to be on a childcare waiting list to even get childcare. Her child trying to sign up as an infant, probably got in at 3 years old. So, shortage of childcare is legitimate. You're a testament to that. And I want to thank Representative Boyd and Senator Kearney for having us in their district today. We could be anywhere in Delaware County because the entire and Senator King, because the entire Delaware County delegation is united in their cause of addressing this child care crisis. And I just want to ask Representative Perry, stand up, give us a wave. Stand up, you want to give us a wave? Any other reps here I can see? Okay, just want to make sure, thank you very much for being here. And they would have plenty to say as well, but we're working with the folks whose district we're in today, so thank you. Why is Children First doing this? You know, during the COVID pandemic, we reached out to counties and we said, families need to still be able to work. Families can't, they're losing income, but, and we're in a crisis, but child care centers are going to close if families don't keep having their children go to child care during COVID, even if they're working at home, because all these professionals will lose their job when all the children stay home with their parents. And Delaware County stepped forward and said, you know what, we're going to make sure families can still go to child care, and one of the ways we're going to do that is recognize that families can't afford child care. And so we're going to subsidize some of the cost of child care for working families. So thank you for doing that, first of all. And now, with COVID over and the COVID funds expiring, the real story of affordability has a face and a name today. And that's what we're here to really learn about and talk about. And so I want to turn this over now for you to explain why you did that and what got us here.
Yes, well, thank you, and thank you to Children First and all of our elected officials who are here today. And I know all of our delegation wanted to be here and some were at other events, so this is something that we all collectively care about, and our entire county council is really an advocate for trying to make sure our child care agencies are supported and that our families have access to quality child care in Delaware County. And that is really what brought it about. Our Women's Commission was one of the groups that actually started the conversation, and working with Child Care Professional Network, we figured out a way and a mechanism in which we were able to fund $5 million in ARPA dollars to go towards child care. And really to help our families who are just above that threshold to be able to gain support from other avenues, to be able to get that group, that additional support so that their children will be able to go to child care. And also help them in getting back in the workforce and being able to, all of these pieces. When you hear the story that you just shared of the mom who got a raise, which is great, but then, like, okay, then it's on the other side, they get bumped out and they're not able to afford the child care. And it's something that happens every day. And it's something that we need to bring more attention to and think through the thresholds that have been set for so long, and really reevaluate where they are and how we can provide more access to our families. And just think through. And so what happened, well, how we got to this point was really the county council, we had received, I think, over 50 or 60 emails from child care centers, from families, from parents, who were starting to realize that the $5 million is about to run out. And it's like, okay, well, are you all going to re-up this? It's like, well, that was a one-time allocation. We don't have any additional funds, and how can we better advocate for creating long-term change in this area? Because it was just a Band-Aid, right? It was something that we could do in the moment, and that all of council worked towards creating the system, but really trying to figure out how do we create more long-term results. And that really helped try to bring everyone to the table, our state delegation, to really think through what are our mechanisms and what are the ways in which we can work together to try and improve this or raise the threshold so that we can reach these families who really need it.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for stepping forward. And we'll take questions from the press shortly, but we want to make sure that we get the experience of the parents out. Before doing that, we thought it would be helpful for everybody to understand how the funds were distributed. And so John Sperduto, who has been a stalwart forever, working on not only childhood issues, the president of the Child Care Professionals Network here, done extraordinary work to improve quality and stabilize the field. You were the vehicle through which this money went, so we'd really love to understand your role in this.
Thank you, and thank you for everyone for being here and for the panel. And to echo Margie, you know, we really want folks to understand that we are professionals. We're not daycare, we're not babysitters, so that I want really that to be front and center. But the Child Care Professionals Network was responding to the need. Parents are reaching out to us during the pandemic. Child care programs are reaching out to us during the pandemic. We were losing schools. We were losing capacity. And we were looking at subsidy. We were looking at the waiting list. We were looking at the eligibility requirements. And there was a massive population in our county that didn't meet that eligibility. They needed care immediately. We put together a proposal based on that, went to council, and overwhelmingly we were supported by council. With that $5 million, we were able to fund about 1,100 families in the county, close to 1,600 children, and nearly 120 child care programs. Of course, the money's gone. We used it all. We did this incredibly successfully. We were able to process applications within 48 hours and get people funded immediately. Once people invoiced us, we were able to get a check to them within 24 hours. So very different than the subsidy system where you had an invoice, wait a month, emergency situation. Somebody called us today, there was a death in their family due to COVID, had been funded by the next day. So the program, and we did this with two people, by the way. Incredible program, incredible support from the county. And as Dr. Keller had said, in the most recent weeks, parents have been reaching out to us left and right. Number one, there's nowhere to go. Number two, they can't afford it. The subsidy reimbursement rates are too low. The wait lists are too long. The criteria to become part of subsidy is too much. We did a very simple application. So we really need to find resources to help those folks who are not eligible for subsidy. And it has to be permanent. You know, $5 million only goes so far, right? Has to be permanent. And we've been begging for this for decades. But now, I mean, we're desperate. We've lost maybe 20 child care centers in Delaware County in the last 3 years. That's hundreds of capacity, hundreds of children. This is forcing people to choose unlicensed child care, which is not the safest situation for children. We want high quality. We want folks that are well trained. We want folks that are licensed. So that's kind of where we are and how we got here.
That's amazing. And thank you for being so rapid. Many counties do not have a vehicle like you through something like this could be effectuated. So that just shows particular infrastructure here in Delaware County. That's really,
We
really
were ready to hit
Yeah.
I'm ready to do it again. So whoever wants to give us money.
So, you know, by way of background, childcare for working families who, you know, most estimates in America show that until you get to about $75,000 or $80,000 in salary in your household, you really can't afford childcare. We do not provide childcare subsidies to people over $75,000 to $80,000, so we tend to do that to about $40,000. So the people from 40 to 75 are deciding what prescriptions to fill, what food to get, whether they can get their kid in a violin program. They're making tough decisions. And often that decision is not to go to work. And we have jobs open across the economy, and we have parents who can't afford childcare. And so what we wanted to do today is talk to the parents who were beneficiaries of these resources, and you hear directly from them. Now, there are more parents here than the two who were speaking, but we have two parents speaking with us today, and one is Arnette Myers-Fitzgerald, And the other is Amy Salovin. And I'm going to start with Arnette, if that's okay. And she's just going to tell you what happened as a result of all this.
Hi, my name is Arnette Myers-Fitzgerald. I am a child care educator. I have my great nieces and nephews in my home during COVID and after COVID due to some family issues. I personally could not afford to put them in child care on my salary. So I received the funding, and it was amazing. It helped out a whole lot because now I could go back to work as opposed to stay home, trying to do this from home. But then it ran out. So I applied for ERLC, and I was on a waiting list. I'm still on the waiting list. And it's just a lot. So now my husband and I are trying, like you said, decide which bill is going to get paid so that we can provide child care for these children. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And like I was saying, on the flip side, as being a child care educator myself, I'm also in school getting my associate's degree. I've done my CDA in infant, toddler, and preschool. So opposed to that, I'm glad that I was able to get a scholarship from First Up to go back to school. So now when we going back to school, some hours are being shifted around. So yes, child care in my home is very necessary right now. But like you said, it's the funding. So, we get help from family members, but for the most part, the bulk is coming out of our pockets.
So, the whole theory in America is you can work your way into the middle class. And here you are, getting your associate's degree, trying to work full time, and the biggest expense that's in your way is childcare. And thankfully, you're willing to work in the childcare sector where the pay's so low because obviously you love children and you're taking care of your nieces and nephews. And you are the exact, example of sort of quote the American dream, and childcare is totally in the way of achieving that. So, we feel for you. We're fighting together. This need for the federal government and the state government to do their part in enabling families to afford to go to work is not only critical for solving the labor shortage, but obviously critical for the peace of mind of families. We also have Amy Salovin, and I really want to thank her, because I think, Amy, you put this graphic together, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I wanted to just give you a chance to talk about it, but I wanted to make sure you have a copy of this, okay?
Yeah.
Great.
Hi. Am I good to start?
Yes,
All
please
right.
go
I'm
ahead.
Amy Salovin. I'm a parent of 2 young children who both attend a child care facility in Delaware County. And I wanted to start, at the risk of being somewhat corny, I want to start with an analogy. So there's a mythological creature. It's a 2-headed serpent. And this is kind of how I envision this issue. There's families on one end, and that's the perspective you're going to hear from me today. There's child care professionals on the other end, and child care centers here in the middle. And really, I wanted to draw attention to this because I feel, as a parent, I'm representing this side. It's very difficult to pay for child care, but I understand completely the need to pay child care professionals a living wage. And stuck in the center are child care centers who want to be able to pay their workers a living wage, but if they risk going too far towards this head, they lose families. If they lower costs for families, they lose workers. So really, I see it as a no-enemy situation, and I just wanted to start with that disclaimer. And in the next few minutes, what I want to do is share my perspective as a parent and offer one potential solution. So we've seen really high turnover rates. We're currently, my child care center is searching for its 4th director in 4 years. It's insane. There's been gaps in between, and there are challenges with this. We, as parents, establish relationships with both the director as well as teachers who have come into the classroom and left for higher wages at places like Wawa or other organizations. And my kids become so attached to these teachers and directors who leave, and it's really hard to explain to a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old who spends more waking hours than you do with your kid why that person isn't there anymore. It's sort of heartbreaking. It's also disconcerting as a parent when you walk into a classroom and you have your little baby and someone you don't know is holding them. You know that the person is trained, but like you have that moment of like, I don't know you. Oh, okay, all right, it's fine. You know, but that moment of panic really sets in. And I see that teachers and childcare professionals are stressed when their coworkers leave and they have to take over the work. When we were looking for a childcare center, starting costs for infant care were between $300 and $600 a week. We were very lucky to find a spot in a childcare center that we liked, but I'll tell you, we didn't have much choice. We were touring centers. A center actually laughed when I asked about getting on the wait list. They were like, it's years long. Good luck. And yeah, now I want to call your attention to this chart here. So I think you all have this in your packet, but what you're seeing here, speaking of cost, so using US Census data and the living wage calculator developed at MIT, which also uses census data, what we're able to see is that childcare, this is data from our county, childcare is the single largest expense for a family of 2 working adults and 2 children. That's a family like mine. And I can personally validate the cost. My daycare charges about within $500 of the cost that's quoted on this chart. So if you compare the annual gross income required to sustain typical expenses for a family of this size, that's just over $122,000 a year. It's significantly higher than the median household income in our county, which is just over $86,000 a year. So that's a difference of $36,000 a year. Some people's entire salary. So if you're a family making at or near the median income, what's the first thing that's going to go? It's going to be childcare. Who is going to leave the workforce to care for the children? Mostly women. I make half of what my husband makes. If we lost childcare, I don't have family in the area. If we lost a spot at our childcare center, I'd have to leave the workforce. There would be no other way, or we'd have to move away from Delaware County, closer to our families. So this is a problem. It's a problem for kids, right? It keeps high cost of childcare, keeps kids out of high quality early education. We know that it's crucial for their cognitive, social, and emotional development. It's bad for parents. It limits their ability to pursue work and education. It's bad for business, decreased employee productivity and retention. And it's bad for society as it perpetuates economic inequalities by limiting access to early education opportunities. So what can we do? We can expand access to subsidized childcare, especially for those who are closer to the median income level for our county. I was really struck by what had been done with the American Rescue Plan dollars, the ARPA dollars that were discussed. I would love to see something like that continue in perpetuity. Or advocating for the increase of the income threshold for families to qualify for other state programs. So I'd really like to thank you for your valuable time, your consideration of this matter, and your advocacy. And I'm happy to discuss further if anyone has questions.
Thank you, Amy. And I think what Arnette and Amy show is that people who are navigating the childcare system are pretty sophisticated, and they know what's going on. And they know that the institutional support needed for them to be able to go to work simply isn't there. We're going to hear from 2 providers, so that professionals who run childcare programs, because I think it's important to understand this from their perspective as well. And then our state lawmakers who are advocating with us to change the situation. So I want to introduce Pastor Davis, and he's with the Faith Worship Daycare Center. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you. So briefly, 18 years ago, I inherited a dying church that had a school that was called the Little Children School in East Lansdowne. And it was a license. They could only operate for a certain number of hours a day. So we had to go through the licensing process. Long story short, we are still open today. But what really kept me have the center open is the fact that when I first started, immigrant children, parents left them home and they went swimming, and one of those children in the summer month drowned. And so in addition to the child care, we added before and after care and a 3-month-long summer program where we can provide a safe place for those children during the summer months. And thank God we have elected leaders who can listen, not because he's here, but we reached out to Senator Kearney a few years ago, and he really has been part of our effort. But we are here today because thank you for running the COVID relief, because at that time it was when we saw the best of our child care center, because we were at least 75% at our capacity. We are licensed for 62 children, and during the COVID time when that subsidy came in, some of our parents who could not afford were able to be reinstated and they benefited from that program. And when the program ended, the number has gone right back where it was. And like the former speaker said, those parents cannot afford, and they sometimes have to make a very difficult choice of taking the children places that does not really enhance their development and growth to become part of the workforce that Delaware County is blessed to have, especially in the growing immigrant population here in Delaware County. And the second part I want to share with you, I don't want to be the doomsayer, but some of you saw what happened in East Lansdowne a couple of months ago when a family of those people died. And it happened right behind the church. And definitely, houses of worship, thanks for hosting us, have always been a place of refuge, a place of educating, a place of safety. And so, at some point last year, I earnestly contemplated closing the child care center because the regulations are there. You have to meet them, both for the space, for the professionals, and people have to pay their bills. We've sacrificed all we can, and I really wanted to close, but as a person of faith, I said we got to hang in and really trust that some way, somehow, we will make this work at the licensed center. So we are here today to really thank you for championing the cause, and we want you to know that Delaware County, you did well with that, and we don't need to wait for another bad thing to happen to really step up to it. I think COVID kind of pushed you to do that, and I've told you 2 very tragic stories, and the earthquake this morning, it could be. We don't need to wait for bad things to happen. It's time to pay it forward and to invest into our children. Lincoln said, the future belongs to those who, invest in it. And the future of our country, of our county, our children. Let's do what we can.
Thank you so much, Pastor. You so eloquently described the fact that our entire workforce system, the entire economy, depends on the generosity of people like Margie and people like you, which is, you sort of know way around the country, obviously. We need to be able to fund childcare sufficiently enough that you're not having to do it on a shoestring. Not that anybody's trying to get rich offering childcare, but it just needs to work, and it's not a working system. Mike Rank, who is a Children First board member and the head of the Delco Y, also a big childcare provider in this county, can attest to that. And I really want to now ask Sharon Snow from Holy Trinity Crossroads to talk about how the whole childcare system and the inaffordability is affecting your operation.
So I have 2 separate places to address. First of all, our program, there were originally 2 programs in the building. I was brought on to open the Crossroads before and after school program in 2007. There was an existing preschool there. The preschool operated until 2020. They shut down during the pandemic, and they were not able to reopen because they could not find staff. That program was there for 50 years, served 110 students a year. My nephew went there. I worked there as well as working in my program. It was heartbreaking. They just didn't have the staff to reopen. They shut down. Plus side of that, I was able to take 2 extra rooms. I can't find staff. I'm now certified and licensed for those 2 extra rooms. I can't find staff for them. School-age care often gets forgotten in these discussions, and it is of utmost importance. And if you've never read Wallace's report, America After 3, look into that. That'll give you all statistics. I'm not a statistics person. I can tell you the real stories. 1/3 to 1/4 of my families are single parents. they cannot afford the cost of care. We had families that did qualify for that wonderful ARPA program. Unfortunately, the money went really fast, and so we had families that qualified but were not able to get the funding. My staff and I took pay cuts so we could scholarship those families so they could stay with us. The people in this field are dedicated to it. I started out in childcare when I was in high school. I left because I saw it was not going to give me the future I wanted for myself. I went back to it 10 years later. I've been in the field since 1999. I scrape by, my staff scrape by, but we do everything we can to make sure our families and our students have the care and the love that they need. These children need a safe place to be in their after-school hours. The parents need to not be worrying about what their child is up to while they're at work. And when it comes to school-age care, the fact is if they don't have care, or they can't afford care, the children are on the streets.
Thank you so much.
We want our kids to be safe, to have a wonderful environment. Even my families where it's two working families, they're struggling to pay. I have families that are in that 40 to 70 gap. They're working 2 jobs. I work 2 jobs to make my ends meet, and it's just me. My son's in college. He's paying his own way because I can't afford to help him. We need a fix. You know, we are solely parent-driven. There aren't additional funds for school-age programs. And most of us are in shared spaces, so we can't get, well, our quality, absolutely, I stand that we're 4 stars at Keystone Stars. We can't get there because we're shared space. We have other things that prevent us from getting there, so we can't access those extra funds. I just beg you to please look at the holistic picture when you're deciding funding and spending dollars. We pay a lot of taxes in this county. There's a lot of money out there that could be put to really great use to help pay our staff living wages so that they can stay in here without putting that burden on the families. I have staff that are leaving right and left because they just can't afford to keep working for us. As much as they love it and as much as they want to do it, we can't, with the cost of inflation, the rising cost, I can't keep working at the salary I'm working at. I can't sustain it. I've got to do it as long as I can. But we need people who are passionate about this profession and passionate about these students and really do truly care for your children, that they have the best education, that they have fun, that they're learning how to work with others, that they're learning how to cooperate, how to share, how to take turns, that they're getting assistance with math and science and social studies. They're getting that foundation that they need to carry them through life and to be successful and to have a better future than we have. You need to support us so we can do that, so we can make that magic happen. Thank you.
Sharon, that was amazing. Thank you very much. The sacrifices that you've made are amazing. Arnette's made sacrifices. The pastor's made sacrifices. Margie's made sacrifices so that families can go to work and kids can develop. And, you know, just to be super clear, if child care providers increased what they pay so they could recruit more workers
And retain them.
and retain them, they would have to increase the price of child care even higher. And the state and the federal government's small play in this, only about 15 to 20% of child care is subsidized. It increases the cost for everybody, because when a child on subsidy comes into a child care program, the program has to charge its other children more to make up for the shortage of subsidy so that they can afford to bring in this family from a lower wealth family. So we are all paying basically a child care tax if you're in the private pay market or you're paying the full freight because of the underinvestment in the government, both for the people that are currently there. There's about 94,000 families in Pennsylvania who receive child care subsidy for full day or before and after school. But there are hundreds of thousands of families that would qualify if funds were there. And that is a low income level. So if you took that up, so these guys could hire staff, the state's resources would have to go higher. But we are, yes, please, Arnette.
Also, you have these child care, you have these services like STARS and different ones who want you to hire quality
Yes.
workers. So they want you to have your staff go to school. They want you to have your staff extend themselves from the CDA programs to the associates, to the bachelors, and even, to masters. And I understand and I get it. Like, I did CDA, now I'm in an associate's program. But at the same token, they want us to do this, but then they don't want to pay us after we go through this process and get these degrees to make this, and what I'm trying to explain is, it's like you said, it's a process for everybody.
Yes.
So for me, I'm very passionate. I've been in childcare since I was 19. I'm 54. And the thing that I've seen is, you go to these centers and they want you to, basically tie your bodies in knots. And I get that the funding is there, but then there's other things, like I always say, there's other ways you can support your staff. You understand? You have a problem. If you have a family emergency, you can't go home or whatever. Or if there's, the problem that I've seen in all centers is the ratio.
Yep.
So now you're not paying me what I'm worth, and then you want me to have a classroom of about 35 children. And this is what I'm saying, and it sometimes it's overwhelming for me and emotional, because I leave my house of my son is 30. I don't have any grandchildren. I'm taking care of great nieces and nephews. So I leave my house of 3 children to take them to child care, to come work for you, and then I have to go home and deal with children. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So you have to be passionate, and no, it's not all the pay. I feel as though we are never going to get paid for what we do. Properly, when I say properly, you have your special needs children, you have your behavior, and this is everything you have to put into play every day.
Well, you should be paid for what you work. First Up is here, and Children First is here, and our fundamental goal is that everybody that works in childcare should be paid the same as somebody who works in kindergarten, and that they should have the same benefit packages. So that is, a somewhat living wage, and depending on what school district you're in, plus you get health care benefit. You are trained like a kindergarten aide right now, and you will soon be trained like a kindergarten teacher, and that's how you should be paid, not at this below Wawa. Imagine people that are leaving childcare to take a job at Wawa. Okay, so the people who have the power to change this and the person are the good Senator Tim Kearney and the great state representative Heather Boyd. So I would love to turn it over to you, Senator.
Thank you, Donna. This is a really complicated issue on the state level in terms of what we're dealing with in Harrisburg, and we probably need 3 or 4 hours to try to dissect it to get to the point where it is. What I've noticed in my sort of 5.5 years in Harrisburg is that we're terrible at investing. I mean, we as in the legislature, in terms of the budget decisions that we make. And I sit on the Education Committee. I'm also the Vice Chair of Appropriations, so I'm sort of at the intersection of the money and the needs and requirements. But we're, I don't think anybody can argue the fact that a successful pre-K program produces better citizens. But they produce them in the future. And that's the hard part for us to get our arms around when we think about the dollars and everything else. I mean, if we look at, for example, the child care tax credit, the child tax credit, which was, expanded during the pandemic, lifted more people in the Philadelphia area out of poverty than any one single thing that any government agency had ever done. We let that stand for a year, and then we took it away again, which is nuts. And we certainly have the opportunity in Harrisburg to do that on the state level. I mean, I think that's the first thing, the kind of low-hanging fruit that we should be really trying to get at and make this work. I tell people I have this flat spot on the side of my head from banging my head against in my office in Harrisburg, and the logic doesn't always work, and things that really make sense for people, we can't always get through in terms of trying to make the case for what to do. I think there's broad agreement that during the pandemic, a lot of things, in a weird way, worked better because we were able to agree on the problems that were there and then agree on solutions that we also agree were going to be short term, but things that could literally get done. And it's really incumbent upon us as legislators, and I talked to everybody in the room here, who are legislators, or their staffs. Thanks for Senator Williams' staff for coming, and my colleague John Kane, and I know my colleague Amanda Capoletti, who's a new mom, is very, there's someone from her office there too. Thanks. We understand, we get it. I mean, the Delco delegation certainly it is all lined up on this. The question is, how do we push it forward, and how do we kind of make it work? So I really should thank Donna and the organizations that are here, because they literally keep the pressure on. Not the pressure on us. I mean, because we understand what's going on, what we're trying to do. It's the pressure on the other people, the people who are controlling the purse, the people who are controlling how the money actually gets allocated. Because that's it's a long process. We went through 2 months worth of budget hearings. I think the good news for the folks in the room is that the governor's budget at least acknowledges this. It acknowledges the fact that we need to spend more money. It puts more money towards these things, not more slots, but more money to fill those same slots, which is a good thing, I think. But we have his attention. We have the governor's attention, and this is an opportunity for us. We have a larger. We have $14 billion of surplus in our general fund. $14 billion, and that's the reason that we have that $14 billion is because the federal government invested $140 billion in the Commonwealth, and that money went right to people's pockets, and it helped pay for pre-K. It helped pay for karate lessons. It helped people go out to dinner when they needed. But the important thing was that the people who got that money spent it, and they invested it back in their own communities and their own economy, and it's circulated. So those people spent it, and those people spent it, and it kept working its way through. And every time it got spent, the Commonwealth got a cut of it, in terms of the taxes. So I remember towards the tail end of the pandemic, every single, we get notices all the time from revenue, how much revenue is coming into the state. And everybody was shocked at the amount of money that was coming in, well above estimates. We're still getting that. There's still the residual, and a lot of people when we talk to about it think it's still the residuals from that money that came and got invested into the people of the Commonwealth. So that in a nutshell is the fight we're trying to fight. It's the fight that we're pushing. We're back in Harrisburg on Monday, and it's we're in the middle of it, in the teeth of the battle budgets and budget battles. Sorry, it's a question of making sure that we understand, get our priorities straight, and understand where we should be putting our dollars where our mouth is in terms of what we're trying to do, and who better to invest in the Commonwealth than our pre-K population. So.
Thank you. It's great to hear you say that, and I think it's all important for us to recognize, none of us can even envision what $14 billion looks like. But that money is sitting there, and then we hear the stories at this table. And these stories, like you said, like Dr. Taylor said, emails, 50, 60 emails coming in. Like, these stories could be told endlessly. We could probably line up 14 billion people with these stories, right? A story for each billion, or there's plenty of them. And the governor's budget begins to move in the right direction, but it is not sufficient to solve this. And so one of the benefits right now is that there's a bipartisan process that the legislature has to undertake, and the Democrats have the House, and they can build on the governor's budget proposal and then stare at the people in the Senate. And we have had these meetings in rural PA where the same conversation's being had. So you're in a particularly useful situation being in the House Democratic Caucus, Representative Boyd. So please tell us what you think will happen.
Oh boy. Thank you, Donna. Well, it's really wonderful to be here. Thank you for holding this in my district. I live across the street. A number of my friends use this location. But I wanted, Amy over here was speaking my story when I was a young mom. My children are 13 and 17. And I live across the street, and I considered Sonshine, and I couldn't afford it. And I was an adjunct professor, and I was making, at the max, $18,000 a year. This is 10 years ago. And I had to come out of the workforce, and my family suffered because I couldn't afford to put 2 kids in childcare. And I chose between them sometimes. Sometimes one kid went. When another kid, I thought, oh, well, I can handle their needs at home while I'm also trying to work from home. I ended up teaching online so that I could work from home with children, as you all know. And I chose between them sometimes. I took my child, who's now going to be a high school senior, out of education facility when he was 4 years old because I couldn't afford to put the baby and the 4-year-old in childcare. I had the benefit, those of you who know this community, down the street here, there's a childcare facility. My kids call it the pencil school, the one with the pencil on the front. And now you can't do this anymore, and I begged, borrowed, and stole for this. They let me pay them for 3 days a week, but because my schedule changed every 8 weeks, they let me change which 3 days every 8 weeks. Nobody will let you do that anymore. and I had to pay out of pocket for all of that. I didn't get a subsidy at all. So I just know the story that Amy's talking about. I went in and out of the workforce. I worked from home with children. I struggled, and we struggled to make ends meet. And that's why I was an educator, and I came out of education because of it. I am not a teacher. I am a state legislator because of that. And I do remember at the beginning, so this is not a new problem. This is not something that started with COVID, but like many things, COVID exacerbated and showed us what was happening. And it made it worse. And I think, I read an article during the first few months of COVID, many of you heard me say this. Other countries have social security nets. The United States has women. Amen. This is undeniably a feminist issue. This is undeniably an issue for women. It is undeniably affecting us as educated women who come in and out of the workforce. It affects my Social Security. When I'm old enough to get Social Security, I will have worked less and for less money in my entire life. Correct. So I'm going to struggle with that forever. The women who are working in this field, which is predominantly women, will have similar challenges because your Social Security is based on the income you made when you were working. So if we can't lift that up, then we can't lift up women. And if we can't do that, then we are not an equal society. We're not addressing equality. We absolutely have to invest in our children and our women and our families. If we want this to work, this society to work, we have to invest in it. And I now have a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old. They are doing well. They're in Upper Darby School District. But the one that I chose to take out of the program at 4, he needed a reading specialist in a public school. Guess what? They cut reading specialists 10 years ago. We are cutting out the legs from under our children and our families if we don't invest in education. And I will promise you that this delegation is wholeheartedly in that fight. We were lucky last year when we went, as you all know, I'm very, very new. I haven't quite been here a year. And last year with the budget came forward, one of the first things I got to do was vote on a budget, and it was more investment than the governor had asked. We increased it. We didn't get everything we wanted. We fight up against things. The Democratic caucus is now just a 1-seat majority in the House. The Senate doesn't have that. We're still in a Republican majority there, and so we don't agree. right? We don't agree on what the priorities are. But if we can push the governor's proposal, and if we can get these things across the finish line, then we can fight about some of that other stuff. But unless we invest in our workforce, our children, our families, I just don't see how we get better, how we support ourselves. So I really appreciate Amy coming here and telling that story. I'm tired of the story being the same decade after decade. I'm sorry that that's where you are. I'm sorry that the just choices that we've all had to make. And I absolutely think we need to do a better job. And I think this delegation is committed to doing that.
Thank you very much. That's quite a story. And just to put the details on the table, and then I'm going to turn it over to Shirley for a second. The governor's budget proposes a $30 million increase in pre-K. And as Senator Kearney said, that would be used to increase the reimbursement rate that pre-K programs are getting, so the hope that they would then be able to increase the wages that they're paying and recruit staff. It does not permit any additional kids to enroll. Pre-K is a small part of the overall child care system. There is a rate increase proposed for child care, also in the governor's budget. The wording of this is esoteric, but it would basically increase, we pay child care programs less by the government than what private parents pay child care programs for child care. That's a norm. So the private parent pays $10,000, $25,000 a year. The government's probably paying about $18,000 a year. Not even that, right? It's really actually lower than that, but I'm just doing that ratio. And so the governor's budget moves that $17,000 a year up to about $18,000. It does not anywhere get near what parents are paying themselves in the private market, and as a result, everybody in the private market is paying a child care tax, because they are subsidizing the people that the state is failing to invest in, and there's too few people that can afford it right now. So the budget proposal needs to be improved. So I'm going to close this over with Shirley, and we'll then take questions. This is Shirley Howe from Children First.
Thanks so much to everyone who's here from elected official offices, elected officials. First and foremost, thank you to Dr. Monica Taylor from Delaware County Council. She brought this to our attention that she was hearing from families who were helped at the county level through the ARPA money that was received on county level. Thanks to John Sperduto for being here to add his piece and how that money was distributed. It was something that Delaware County did better than a lot of surrounding counties in terms of what they were using their ARPA money for. Even at the very start of the pandemic, PPE equipment and supplies were given to child care centers through our chamber, through the Delaware County Chamber. So there were partnerships that existed in some way prior to the pandemic, but they were really relied on during the county. So thank you to the county, but then also we brought our state legislators in, so many of you who are here and representing their offices, so thank you. Because this is something that the county can't sustain. This is not a county responsibility. It was money that was used effectively during a critical point in our history during the pandemic, but that responsibility lies with the state. So thanks to Senator Kearney, Senator Payne, Representative Boyd, who represent this area, for pointing that out, some of the realities that exist on the state level and in Harrisburg. Tyrone Scott is here from First Up. We work together in the southeast counties. We're in Harrisburg, hitting the pavement. Visibility days. We'll be there next week, every single day that the House and Senate are in session. So apologies to every legislator. We will be visiting over and over again because this is cyclical. It's unsustainable to support at the county level. We need the state to step in. And then thank you most of all to parents and providers who are here today to tell us what their personal stories are. Thanks, Representative Boyd, for talking about your personal stories. My kids are older than yours. I had the same, they're 22, I have 19-year-old twins. It was a problem back then. How come we're not solving this issue? This is not a new issue. We're looking to the state. And so thank you all for being here today. And then we'll take questions. I know that Kathleen Carey's here from News Outlet. If you have any questions for us, reporters, or anybody else that's here in the audience.
Donna, how much is needed to fill the gap?
So the proposal that we are asking the lawmakers to embrace is a $270 million increase above what the governor has proposed that would go to child care centers for recruitment and retention payments for staff specifically. The $30 million that the governor's proposed for pre-K, that we're feeling like, okay, that's a good start, but the rest of the system, the child care system, we are asking for $270 million. And believe me, that is, maybe going to enable people to compete with Wawa, but not much more. But you just heard it, staff leaving for Wawa, let's start where we can. The overall proposal that we advanced was about $440 million. That would have dramatically changed the game in terms of being able to recruit staff and stop child care tuition increases. But knowing that the governor came in much lower, we're asking at least for the funds for recruitment and retention.
Would that, in a perfect world, would that be an annual figure?
That would be recurring?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Remember, it's $14 billion out there, so it's.
Does that address that 40 to 70,000?
No, so there is no, right now there is no proposal on the table to increase child care eligibility. We are all working on one that we hope that this time next year will be included in the governor's budget. So that is the next step. This is simply to stabilize the system right now and decrease the pressure on private sector tuition by putting more subsidy resources on the table and enabling staff to get hired. But we are, in the child care world, all working on a plan that we hope the governor will embrace by next year to increase child care eligibility.
There seems to be in the House and in the Senate and in the General Assembly a lot of tension in terms of what priorities are and everything. Is there any way outside of infusing funds into it, which is obviously needed, is there a way to incentivize businesses to provide or to give grants to their employees or to provide child care for their employees? Is there a way to do that?
Yes, I'm sure that, there's been other states that have done it, and there are definitely policy approaches we could take. They very rarely don't cost funds, right? Like, there's very few that don't cost something.
Right.
But there are lots of, avenues, if you will. This is not for employers. I think employers are probably a little scared of this concept, but we have passed $15 an hour minimum wage, right? And we have to be, and these are state funds. If we were to pass the $15 minimum wage, I immediately get calls from my school districts that say, okay, are you going to help us pay this? Well, we're going to have to. We're going to have to. We can't put those requirements on our state-funded employers and then say, oh, how are you supposed to meet the state requirement? So we are going to have to, find as many paths. It's not just one.
It just seems like when you see the gap, when you see the income gaps between the wealth and the poor in this country, not even just in the state, how that continues to grow and grow and grow and grow. And you see people who are trying to provide good services. You see families who are trying to work, and they can't even do it because they can't afford the care. And then you see people at the other end just getting richer and richer and richer. Like, what do we do with that?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important to you have to look at this in the context of the court case around basic education funding. You can't really separate the two for a certain thing. And that's one of the fundamental questions we're dealing with is, I get sick and tired of hearing from my colleagues, well, this isn't just a money issue, And the court case very specifically pointed out, yes, it is a money thing,
right.
And it's the way that kind of works. So what we need is to really start to think about this in ways that we have to start attacking various things. Like, we make it very difficult for local governments or county governments or anybody to literally raise funds. We severely limit them to what they can, how they can raise money, and how that sort of works. We need to loosen those things up a little bit and start to really look at an ideal thing. We need to get rid of things like our flat income tax rate. We have a clause that basically says we got to make everything fair. And of course, by making it fair, you're making it incredibly unfair. It's just the opposite. We're like one of 3 or 4 states left in the country that still have that flat income tax, not a progressive tax. And it's like, until we start to really deal with issues like that, we're never going to be able to fund things the way that they really need to be funded.
And that'll
Increase,
take a
increase capital gains.
It will.
Right?
That's a constitutional amendment change, so that's a two section.
Yeah, but it's not, it's a
process.
non-starter right now.
Right.
It's been a non-starter for, as long as I can remember. And it's nuts. I mean, Pennsylvania needs to catch up with,
Just
people along the way.
piece of technical info. There are states that have tax incentives for businesses to start childcare. Think about it this way. I just told you there's 94,000 families in subsidized childcare. There's probably about 3.5 million children in childcare in Pennsylvania. 10 businesses are going to do that. Like, businesses are not going to solve this out of their bottom line because their shareholders and owners are not going to stand for that, right? It's not the way business functions, right? So unless there's a requirement that business do that, you're basically working on the same generosity that Arnette has. A generous business stepping forward. Maybe they'll do it for 10 employees, but as a systemic solution for 3.5 million children or more, we actually need something that is a sustainable funding stream.
Right. It just seems like this has been going on for decades and decades and decades. It's like, so where do you start? I mean, it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of like news.
So you should, one of the things that we have tried to explain to Republican and Democratic lawmakers in Harrisburg is other states are stepping forward in very ambitious ways. Maine passed funding for universal child care subsidy, every family in the state. Oklahoma has universal free pre-K for every 3 and 4-year-old. Governor Youngkin, these are Republican governors, by the way. Governor Youngkin in Virginia proposed $440 million this year to increase what child care providers are being paid. So there are others, like this is not, we're in a very conservative environment as it relates to child care compared to other states, including Republican states across America. Kentucky, Republican legislature, investing much more than we are. So, you know, there are Democratic states doing more than us too, but there are Republican states. It's,
It can be done.
It can be done, and there are other states far surpassing us.
That's all I had.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to share my story too with the moms.
What's your name?
My name's Megan. Hi, I'm Megan Ross. I'm actually a chemist for a nonprofit organization out in Town Square. I would love to work in full time, but I can't afford it. I cannot afford to be at my job every day. And I do something, I make a database for like the FBI, NASA, I do material science. I have 2 children. I can only afford to put one of them part-time currently in my daycare, childcare. And it's frustrating because I absolutely love the people that my older son goes to. And every day, his little brother goes, "Oh, mommy, school, school, school." I'm like, "There's not a spot for you. There's not a spot. We have to wait." I've been on the waiting list, and you know, it's hard because they're having a hard time keeping employees. They're having a hard time recruiting the employees. So they can't pay their staff. I can't even afford it, and now I can't afford to go to work. So it's.
And you're a highly educated chemist.
And I'm kind of right? But I also make too much money, so I pay out of pocket, right? So I'm paying everything privately. What's frustrating is, you know, I don't want to say it was democratic, but I was promised, you know, with Biden, oh, there's going to be a family act, and, you know, child care is going to be more than 7% of your income. Well, that failed. That ethically failed. Oh, well, my student loans are going to be forgiven. That was a lie too.
Yes, it was.
So now everything that was kind of being promised, it's falling through, and it's now catching up to us, because now all my payments are being required. Like, I have to pay my student loans back. Now child care is even more. I was so fortunate. I was able to go get approved by the skin of my teeth the COVID funding to keep my older son in daycare, child care, while the time is going through. Like, so I want to know, like, me and my husband are both college educated. We don't make enough money. We make too much money. What are we supposed to do?
Right, you and I are living the same life, and I totally understand. And I'm frustrated. I'm incredible. Why I ran for office.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest, it's why I decided to get more involved in the actual side that can change something. The challenge is,
we have to all get on the same page. The president doesn't decide. The president can say this is my plan, but he doesn't decide, Congress does. Right. And so the governor's gonna put this forward, he doesn't decide, we do. And we have to get this plan over the finish line, which is why these things are so important, because the community doesn't understand that, right? That doesn't show up in the conversation. But the legislators have to pass the budget in order for these things to actually happen. The governor can't do it alone. And so we have to do it with him. And right now, we are not in agreement. The House is in agreement with him. I'm ready to go farther than this. Thank you, Donna, for recommendations to go farther than this. The Senate hasn't quite got, we don't have enough senators to go along with the governor. They want other things. They have different priorities.
Right, so in divided government,
We're
our
always
voice,
like that, by the way.
in divided government, our voice has to be louder, right? And so I'll give you another example to your point on the Biden child care proposal. There's only, every Democrat in the Pennsylvania congressional delegation voted for that, which is a minority of the delegation, and one Republican, and all the other Republicans voted against the child care package, right? They voted against it, so it couldn't move. And so this is not about being partisan. I want you to come and join us and tell Republican senators your story. Yes. They need to hear your story. And they hear it in their community. Like I said, we're holding events like this across the state, but it needs to get louder and louder and louder.
I just want to add
Gina Curry is dying.
I just want to say something too. We have an election coming up, and here's what's going to happen. Our numbers are going to be so low for who votes. And so when we have these types of conversations, we have to understand that people are not going to the polls. And so that is the chance for people to really say we're tired. We're tired of what's happening. You have to look at what's going on and you have to vote. Because what's happening is we're already there. We're in there trying to do the work. But when people don't vote, we continue to suffer like this. Look at the numbers. April 23rd. Mark my words, people will not vote, and this is what continues to happen.
And we are bipartisan. We are not and we welcome every Republican
That's
and
right.
Democrat that wants to stand with us.
Bring it on.
Just real quick. The thing is, during the pandemic, I brought up this example earlier. We were able to agree on what the problem was.
Yes.
And we were able to actually make solutions that worked, albeit temporarily. Yeah. As soon as we got 3/4 of the way through the pandemic, then the politics reared its head again, right? And all of a sudden, the governor was a tyrant, and they're taking away my rights, forcing me to wear masks. All those kinds of things happened, and that really has fed into the kinds of things. So the reason that Biden didn't keep those promises wasn't because of Biden, and it wasn't because of it wasn't a Democrat versus Republican issue in terms of that per se. But once we got back into the normal, swing of things, all of a sudden, all these old standing ways of thinking about things reared their heads back up, and we stopped spending money on things that we should have continued to spend money on.
But like Heather said, we got more money for child care last year. We want to continue to get more money for child care this year. I encourage you to join us in going to Harrisburg. Shirlee is organizing with flyers in the back. We'll go to Harrisburg regularly. We will organize. You will speak with your lawmakers. You will speak with people on the other side of the aisle. We need to make sure, whatever your aisle is, we need to make sure everybody is hearing from you and from you and from the pastor. They need to know this story is real. And so thank you very much for coming today. And please join us in this fight. Thank you.